Three midterms. I have not been able to give it the full attention that I wanted to. I've been meaning to give you like a Kentucky resolutions resource sheet because that was a point that got covered like lightning fast, if really at all, in lectures. So can I just take like 2 more minutes of your time to talk about it? Um, I just want to. There's some simple context. I don't know if I have a resource, but uh, here, let's just Google it. What was the Kentucky resolution? Resolutions. Resolution. Um, I'm not going to read this verbatim. I just want to give you at least something to look at. I relatively trust this, but look, Kentucky resolution was a responsive legislative act on the part of the Kentucky government, backed by Jefferson and authored by him, I think. Um, and specifically, it was in response to an act passed by Congress called the Alien and Sedition Acts. Now, the Alien and Sedition Act was this special law that Congress wrote, like I think it was late 1700s. Yeah, that's right, 1798. Um, was basically like promising this power that we are now saying that the president officially has a power to basically get rid of anybody in this country he deems as a threat, or kind of almost for whatever reason, right? Now, this is a really scary proposition. Hopefully, you recognize, and something that you realize that today, especially again, would be very contentious. Uh, Presidents try often at times to do something similar to this, and for the most part, it's met with contention, and typically gets shot down. I think some modern day similarities would be like Trump's travel ban for Muslim Americans and etc. Again, I'm not gonna talk on that one too much because I need more detail to be specific and offer you something quality there. But um, yeah, still governments have made certain executive orders along these lines, and continue to do so. And generally, that is met with Supreme Court hearings that deem that as being an unconstitutional act. Another example of this would be Japanese internment in World War II. Even though we're not asking them specifically to leave the country, we are forcing them to leave public areas and you know live in these controlled spaces that we can monitor them in the event that there are spies among us who seek to do harm to the nation. So problematic. But like I said, this is a really controversial act that's basically trying to give the president powers beyond the Constitution. So super relevant to what we've talked about, where it's ordinary laws trying to manipulate the supreme law. Um, Trying to grant powers outside of the Constitution that are received with as being unconstitutional. These things were quickly done away with. So what else do I want to say? I'm sorry, I don't want to waste your time. Kentucky resolutions. Oh yeah. So last thing too. It wasn't just that the Alien Sedition Act was saying that the president had this power. It was also specified really shadily that and when the president makes these decisions, nobody can criticize Congress or the president for it. And so, anyways, now we have two clear violations of Bill of Rights here, like freedom of speech and uh, something else. It's gonna come to mind later. Too late. Anyways, again, very problematic. And so the Kentucky resolutions was basically the Kentucky government specifically seeing this act that's being passed on a federal level and basically arguing that this is super not cool and we're not going to enforce it. And so the Kentucky resolutions was basically Kentucky's response to the Alien and Sedition Act, exclaiming openly that we as a state government reserve the right to not uphold certain laws that we deem as being unconstitutional. Now, this is really big. This is what we call the principle of nullification. And nullification itself is not necessarily a true principle reflected in like American law. However, it is an interesting topical idea that is brought up that has many severe and terrible implications on the future, specifically with the Civil War. Now Jefferson again is the main pilot behind this like concept of the nullification and saying that states have this authority. But this is going to cause a lot of problems again in that debate of, in the battle of federalism, who ultimately has a little bit more power than the other? Is it the state or the national government? When we get to the Civil War and like start talking about like why certain states are seceding from the Union, this principle of nullification is going to come up again as being like one of the main arguments behind the states being like, well, I mean, with this Lincoln guy coming in, like basically telling us like, hey, who's likely going to push like abolitionist policies. Like the Constitution itself has compromises that enable the practice of slavery to continue, and therefore, like you know, under this new presidency, we're gonna, there are going to be definite violations to us of what the Constitution was all about, and so therefore, we reserve the right to not enforce and even not enforce these the jurisdiction of the federal government when it behaves like this. And even so, we reserve the right to leave and secede. So, going to be problematic coming up later in the future. But again, we'll talk about it. But I just understand this principle of nullification. It's going to come up again and be really important. Yeah, anyways, that's what I got for you. Thanks, guys. We're basically at almost an hour flat, which is kind of exciting. I love round numbers. But anyways, I appreciate you for listening. Please, again, reply to this email just saying like you watched it. Again, I appreciate your patience and hopefully this should be easy, convenient, and also helpful in that like now you have like access to like I think some pretty good notes. So anyways, thanks guys. I'll see you later.